I've always believed that helping family was the right thing to do. My name is Nathan. I'm 38 years old, living in a modest two-story house on the edge of Maplewood, Ohio. I work as an operations manager at a local logistics company. For years, I thought kindness and patience were my strongest traits. Funny how life has a way of testing exactly what you think you're good at. It didn't start with shouting matches or slam doors. It started the night Emma's brother showed up on our doorstep, suitcase in hand, looking as though the world had crushed him. That was 14 months ago. Back then, I truly believed we were just going to help him out for a few weeks. His name was Ryan, 31, freshly single, jobless, and, according to Emma, in the middle of a really bad time. I still remember the way Emma introduced the idea to me. We were in the kitchen. I just poured myself a late coffee. She looked nervous, her fingers tapping the side of her mug. Just for a few weeks, she'd said, until he figures things out. I didn't hesitate. Of course, I said yes. I loved Emma. We'd been married 6 years, and I'd never seen her so worried. Helping family was what you did. The first couple of weeks, Ryan mostly stayed in the guest room. He slept late, watched TV in the living room, and barely spoke at dinner. I remember thinking, he's hurt. Give him time. But a few weeks turned into a month, then 2. Slowly, I noticed things changing around the house. The bathroom sink would be full of his beard trimmings. Dishes stacked in the sink from lunch he'd made for himself while I was at work. The thermostat always set higher than we could afford. Small annoyances, I told myself. Family is worth it. What I didn't see then, what I should have seen, was that while I was making excuses, Ryan was making himself at home. And Emma? Well, Emma was making excuses too. Whenever I gently brought up the bills creeping higher or the groceries disappearing twice as fast, Emma would shake her head. Nathan, he's going through so much. You know that. And I'd nod, swallow my frustration, and tell myself I could handle it. It's strange how it creeps up on you. You don't notice, day by day, the way you start to feel like a stranger in your own living room. The way you hesitate before opening your mouth, because you know your concerns will be brushed aside. By month 5, Ryan had turned the guest room into his own private apartment. Gaming console hooked up, laundry basket spilling over, snack wrappers on the floor. But every time I tried to talk to Emma about setting a timeline, her eyes would harden. He's my brother, she'd say, her voice tight with something close to anger. He needs us right now. I didn't want to fight. I loved her. So I kept quiet. I remember one night, lying awake next to Emma while she slept soundly. I stared at the ceiling and tried to convince myself that patience was the answer. That family was worth discomfort. That real love meant sacrifice. And I believed it, at least until Ryan's presence started to cost more than money. A few months in, the weight of unspoken words started to settle heavy on my chest. I'd come home after a long day to find Ryan stretched out on the couch, his shoes kicked off, a half-eaten pizza on the coffee table. Our coffee table. Emma would be in the kitchen, cooking dinner, chatting with him about his day as though nothing was wrong. I'd watch them, this small bubble that didn't seem to include me anymore. And each night, after Ryan went upstairs, I'd try to bring it up carefully. Em, I'm just worried. I'd start, keeping my voice calm. It's been 5 months. Has he talked about job interviews? Any plans to move out? Her face would close instantly. Nathan, don't start. He's trying. You have no idea what he's dealing with. But that was just it. I didn't. Ryan never spoke to me about what he was going through. He barely spoke to me at all. When we were both in the kitchen or living room, he'd scroll through his phone or put on headphones. I'd become invisible in my own house. One Friday night, I checked the mailbox and saw the electric bill, nearly double what it had been the same month the year before. My stomach clenched. That evening, I tried again with Emma. Babe, look at this, I said, handing her the bill. We can't keep this up. We're burning through our savings. She didn't even look at the paper. So now it's Ryan's fault we're struggling? He's family, Nathan. Have some compassion. I tried to explain that compassion didn't mean ignoring reality, but she walked away mid-sentence, muttering that I was being cruel. The silence between us grew. Conversations felt rehearsed, shallow. At night, we'd lie side by side, closer in distance than we'd ever felt in heart. And all the while, Ryan's presence spread quietly, like a shadow crawling across the walls. Around the 7th month, the breaking point came quietly, disguised as an ordinary Thursday. I came home early from work. A meeting had been canceled. Ryan was in the living room, controller in hand, shouting at the TV. Empty takeout boxes were piled on the coffee table, and soda cans rolled onto the rug. The house smelled of fried food and stale air. He glanced at me and went back to his game without a word. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not rage, exactly, but a sudden raw clarity. This wasn't temporary anymore. Ryan wasn't planning to leave. And Emma wasn't going to make him. That night, I tried again. "Emma, we need to talk about Ryan." I began. My voice shook, but I pushed forward. "We can't keep living like this. I feel like a guest in my own home." She stared at me, her expression hardening, and something inside me broke when she whispered, "Maybe you should try being more understanding instead of making everything about you." I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake, listening to the creak of Ryan moving around upstairs, the faint glow of his TV flickering through the gap under the door. Our house, our sanctuary, felt like it belonged to someone else. Weeks passed. My patience thinned. The grocery bills kept rising. My tools went missing from the garage. Ryan borrowed my truck and returned it on empty. When I asked Emma, she brushed it aside. He had to run errands, Nathan. Stop being so dramatic. By month 9, my paychecks were barely covering everything. Emma had switched to part-time work, saying she wanted to be around more for Ryan, to help him heal. Meanwhile, I picked up overtime, coming home exhausted to find Ryan still lounging around, untouched by responsibility. I tried to keep my voice gentle at night. I finally confronted him directly. "Ryan, we need to figure something out. Even a part-time job would help." He didn't even pause his game. "Talk to Emma," he mumbled, eyes locked on the screen. And that was it. No apology, no recognition of the months he'd spent in our home. The realization that hit me was cold and heavy. Ryan had no intention of changing because he didn't have to. Emma wouldn't ask him to, and he didn't respect me enough to care. I thought things couldn't get worse, but I was wrong. By the 10th month, the exhaustion had seeped into every part of my life. At work, I'd catch myself staring at spreadsheets without reading a single number. In meetings, my mind wandered to thoughts I never imagined I'd have. That maybe it would be easier to go home to an empty house than to the uneasy silence that waited for me there. Each evening became a ritual of disappointment. I'd pull into the driveway and see Ryan's car. Emma had co-signed for it after his old one died. Though I'd barely been consulted, I'd step inside and smell the stale scent of takeout and leftover food. And there he'd be, feet propped up, controller in hand, barely lifting his eyes as I walked past. One Thursday, I came home later than usual. The living room was empty, but the lights were on. I walked to the kitchen and froze. Emma and Ryan were sitting at the table, heads bent over the same laptop. They looked up at me, startled, like I'd interrupted something. "Hey," I managed, forcing a smile. "What's going on?" "Ryan's been helping me look at new furniture," Emma said, her voice overly bright, the kind she used when she was hiding something. "The couch is falling apart." My chest tightened. That couch had been fine. But what really got to me was how they'd been planning together, making decisions that once would have been ours to make as husband and wife. After Ryan went upstairs, I asked Emma quietly, "Why didn't we talk about this together first?" She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Nathan, it's just a couch. You're always working." Ryan was here, so I asked him to help. The words stung more than they should have. "You're always working." As if I wanted to be gone so often. As if the mounting bills and Ryan's freeloading hadn't forced me into those extra hours. That night, I lay awake again, listening to the familiar creak of Ryan's steps overhead. I wondered how many small choices had brought us here. Me trying to keep the peace, Emma refusing to see what was happening, Ryan taking more space each day until there was no space left for me. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about how I'd become invisible in my own marriage. As the months stretched on, The cracks widened. Ryan's presence turned from an inconvenience to a constant, suffocating shadow. He was there in every conversation, every plan. Emma's sentences started with, "Ryan thinks," or "Ryan suggested," and my name? My name barely came up at all. The bills piled higher. One day, I opened the credit card statement and felt my stomach twist. Hundreds spent on food deliveries, games, and subscriptions I'd never heard of, all tied to the same delivery address. Our address. I confronted Emma carefully, holding out the statement like proof. These charges, did you order all this?" She didn't meet my eyes. "Ryan might have used the card. It's not a big deal, Nathan." "It is a big deal," I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts. "He spent hundreds. We can't afford this." She bristled instantly. "You're overreacting. He'll pay us back." I wanted to ask the obvious question, when? But the words caught in my throat, because deep down I knew the answer. Ryan had no intention of paying anything back, and Emma had no intention of asking him to. A few weeks later, I discovered something worse. I'd logged into our joint bank account to transfer money for the mortgage, and I noticed several cash withdrawals. $300 here, $200 there every month. When I asked Emma, she hesitated before saying it was just for groceries and small things. But our grocery payments were still coming out on the card. The numbers didn't add up. That night, after Emma fell asleep, I stayed up at the kitchen table, bank statements spread out in front of me. The pattern was there, clear as day. The withdrawals lined up with Ryan's arrival. Small enough amounts that maybe Emma thought I wouldn't notice, but steady. Always cash. Always unexplained. I sat there for what felt like hours. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the house. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. The betrayal wasn't just Ryan's laziness anymore. It was Emma's complicity. She hadn't just offended him. She'd funded him. With our money. Behind my back. The man I'd opened my home to was draining my savings. And the woman I loved was letting him do it. The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. Over coffee, I told Emma we needed to have a serious talk. My voice was shaking, my palms damp. "We can't keep living like this. Ryan has to contribute or leave." Her expression changed instantly, from calm to cold. "You're asking me to throw my brother out on the street?" "I'm asking for fairness, Emma. For respect. I'm working 60 hours a week to keep us afloat while he sits here all day, spending money we don't have." Her jaw tightened. "He's family, Nathan. You're being cruel." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. Cruel was what I felt every time I saw my account balance drop. Cruel was coming home to my own house and feeling like a guest. But the words stayed locked behind my teeth. That evening, I came home to find my clothes folded on the couch. Not angrily thrown, but neatly stacked. It was almost worse that way. Emma wouldn't even look at me. "If you can't support my brother," she whispered, "then maybe you should sleep downstairs until you can see how selfish you're being." I stared at the pile of shirts and jeans. In that moment, the truth landed, heavy and cold. She had chosen. And it wasn't me. Nights on the couch felt like exile. Ryan's laughter drifted down from upstairs, muffled by walls that suddenly felt paper thin. My back ached on the cushions that weren't made for sleep. But the ache inside of being unwanted in my own home hurt worse. Every creak of the floorboards above reminded me that my kindness had been taken for weakness. And Emma's silence each morning told me that my love had been mistaken for blind loyalty. Yet, somehow, even then, a part of me hoped she'd see it. That she'd come down those stairs, apologize, and say we'd face this together. But each morning, she passed me without a word, coffee cup in hand, eyes fixed anywhere but on me. And Ryan? He never spoke to me. Never offered so much as an awkward apology for being the cause of all this. His silence screamed what words never could. "I don't respect you. I don't have to." I don't remember the first night I stopped believing Emma's excuses. But I remember the first morning I admitted it to myself. The sun was barely up. I was lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling while Ryan's TV droned on upstairs. I hadn't slept a full night in weeks. The house felt foreign. I used to walk these halls with ease. Every picture on the wall of memory, every corner a promise Emma and I had made together. Now it was like living inside someone else's life. one I was paying for but no longer belonged to. I got up and made coffee, black, bitter, just enough to keep my eyes open. I checked my phone. Emails from work, a few promotions from stores we couldn't afford anymore, and a text from my brother. You good? Haven't heard from you. I almost typed back I'm fine, but the words felt like a lie even before they formed. I set the phone down and rubbed my eyes instead. That morning, Emma came down the stairs like she hadn't kicked me out of our bed just days earlier. She didn't look at the couch or the crumpled blanket or the stack of my clothes I'd pushed aside to make space for my legs. She just went straight to the kitchen, made her own coffee, cream and sugar, the way I used to fix it for her when we were still us, and sipped it while scrolling on her phone. I watched her, waiting for her to say come back upstairs, or I'm sorry, or even let's talk. But all she said was, you left the back door unlocked last night. Not how did you sleep? Not are you okay? Just a quiet scolding, like I was a careless roommate. I nodded, took my mug to the sink, and left for work without another word. It was easier that way. If I didn't ask for kindness, she didn't have to pretend to give it. A week later, I found my truck missing from the driveway. At first I thought maybe it had been towed. Maybe I'd forgotten to renew the tags. Maybe I'd parked it wrong. But then I checked my messages and saw none. I stood there in the morning sun, keys in my hand, staring at the empty concrete like an idiot. Ryan came downstairs half an hour later, hair still wet from a shower he didn't pay for. He grabbed a protein shake from the fridge, popped the cap, and glanced at me. Hey man, I borrowed the truck. Emma said it was cool. The audacity of it was almost laughable. Where did you go? I asked, my voice calm, but my hands trembling so bad I had to shove them into my pockets. Just needed to run some errands. Groceries. Couple things for the house. He shrugged, like I should thank him for doing chores I hadn't asked for. I waited. No apology. No promise to fill the tank back up. He just brushed past me and padded back upstairs, the slam of his bedroom door echoing to the quiet house. When Emma got home that evening, I asked her directly, did you tell Ryan he could take my truck? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Just dropped her purse by the table, toed off her shoes. It's not a big deal, Nathan. He needed to pick up some things for me. For you? Emma, you could have asked me. That's my truck. My name's on the insurance. What if he crashed it? What if... You're overreacting, she snapped, cutting me off. He didn't crash it. He's being helpful. Why can't you see that? The fight that followed wasn't loud. No door slammed, no plates thrown. But her voice turned to stone every time I pushed back. I asked for something so small. Please tell me before you let him take my things. And somehow I was a villain for wanting respect in my own home. By the 12th month, I'd stopped talking to Emma about Ryan. What was the point? Every conversation ended the same way. Her eyes blank, her tone clipped, the same refrain like a broken record. He's family. He's trying. You're cruel. I saw the bank statements late one Friday night. I hadn't planned to snoop, but an overdraft notice popped up on my phone, and panic took over. I opened the online portal, and there it was. Our balance drained to almost nothing. Again, it wasn't just the usual bills. It wasn't just the utilities or the grocery runs. It was the cash withdrawals. Neat, regular, and always in round numbers. $200 here, $300 there. Always marked ATM, East Side branch. I clicked back month by month, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. The pattern went back almost to the week Ryan moved in. I did the math in my head. How much over time I'd pulled just to stay afloat while our money dripped away like a leaking pipe. When Emma came downstairs, I was still sitting there, laptop open, bank statements pulled up like evidence in a trial. She stopped when she saw my face. What's wrong? She asked, though her voice told me she already knew. Where's it going, Emma? I asked. My voice cracked. I hated how small I sounded. Where's our money going? She didn't answer at first. Just crossed her arms, leaned against the counter. The silence between us roared louder than any fight we'd ever had. Finally, she said, Ryan's had a hard time. He needed help. Our money, Emma. Not yours. Not mine. Ours. You lied to me. Her eyes flashed anger, not regret. Don't you dare twist this. You're acting like he's a stranger. He's my brother. He's family. I'm trying to take care of him because you won't lift a finger to understand what he's going through. I laughed then, bitter and hollow. I lift every finger. I work 60 hours a week. I pay every bill. I bought every meal he's eaten since he showed up. Don't be dramatic. She pushed off the counter, brushing past me like I was a piece of furniture in her way. You're making this so much worse than it is. I wanted to shout. I wanted to slam my fist on the table and make her look at me, really look at me. But the worst part? She wouldn't. And I knew, deep down, she hadn't in a long time. I slept on the couch that night, laptop still open on the coffee table, bank statements glaring at me in the blue glow of the screen. I thought about the first time Emma and I had toured this house. How she'd squeeze my hand when the realtor opened the door, whispering, "I can see us here, Nathan. I can see a life." And now all I saw was a prison I'd paid to build around myself. A prison she'd left unlocked for someone else to run wild inside. Around 3 a.m., I closed the laptop and lay there in the dark, listening to the refrigerator hum, the clock tick, the floorboards creak upstairs as Ryan padded to the bathroom and back again. He didn't even bother to tiptoe anymore. I realized then that I wasn't angry. Not the fire-breathing anger that makes you throw things or shout until your voice goes raw. No, this was something worse. I was numb, and numb was dangerous. Numb meant I'd given up hoping she'd change. Numb meant I'd stopped seeing this house as home. Numb meant I was finally ready to admit the truth. Emma didn't pick me. She hadn't for a long time. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to stop picking her, too. Funny how it all starts with love. The kind that makes you overlook the small things. A missed call, a late night out, a half-truth here and there. Love blinds you in the beginning, then quietly ties your hands behind your back when the truth shows up. That night on the couch, my mind refused to shut down. My eyes burned from staring at the ceiling, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, memories did. I remembered Emma's laugh when we first met, the way she scrunched her nose when something really amused her. I remembered the Sunday morning she used to stay in bed, hand on my chest, tracing lazy circles until the sun climbed too high. I remember believing, with the kind of stupid certainty only love can create, that nothing could shake us. Then I remember Ryan. The first night he walked in, suitcase in one hand, cheap cologne following him like a stubborn ghost. Emma had rushed to greet him, arms wrapped tight around his shoulders, as if she'd been waiting her whole life to have him back. I'd stood there, feeling like an extra in my own movie. It'll just be for a few weeks, Emma had said, voice bright, hopeful. He just needs time to sort things out. And I'd nodded, because that's what love makes you do. You nod even when something inside you whispers, this won't end the way you hope. Weeks became months. Ryan's presence spread through the house like spilled ink. His shoes by the door, his takeout boxes stacked on the counter, his gaming headset tangled in the living room cords. Every time I walked in, there was something new of his where my things used to be. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. Home isn't walls or furniture. It's the people you share it with. But the truth is, space matters. Boundaries matter. And Ryan didn't see walls. He saw open doors. Emma defended him at every turn. The late-night TV that kept me awake? He can't sleep otherwise. The empty gas tank in my truck? He was doing errands for us. The dirty dishes left in the sink? He's been stressed, give him a break. And each defense chipped away at something inside me until I couldn't recognize the man staring back at me in the bathroom mirror every morning. The hardest part wasn't Ryan himself. It was Emma. It was seeing the way her face softened when she spoke to him, the way her eyes hardened when she turned to me. It was realizing that somewhere along the way, my wife had stopped being on my side. That realization came slowly, painfully, like water wearing down stone. The first time it really hit me was a Wednesday evening. I came home early from work, surprise takeout in hand, thinking we could steal back a little piece of how we used to be. I found them laughing in the kitchen. Emma was stirring pasta sauce. Ryan leaned against the counter, beer in hand, saying something that made her tilt her head back and laugh so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. When she saw me, the laughter died on her lips, replaced by that closed-off expression I'd come to hate. "Oh," she said, her voice dropping. "You're home." 3 words. That was all, but they sounded like an apology for my existence. I put the takeout on the counter, trying to hide the sting in my chest. I thought we could have dinner together. Ryan pushed off the counter, not bothering to hide his annoyance. "We're good, man. Emma's cooking." "Right," I muttered. "Of course." That night, I ate alone on the couch while they ate together at the kitchen table. I watched them from across the room, the space between us so much bigger than a few feet of hardwood floor. It wasn't always like this. I remember a winter 3 years ago when Emma and I got snowed in. The power went out, so we lit candles and built a nest of blankets on the living room floor. We drank wine, told each other silly stories, and fell asleep to the sound of the wind outside. In that moment, it felt like the world could end and I wouldn't care, as long as she was there. Now the power stayed on. The lights were bright, but the warmth was gone. One Sunday morning, I caught myself daydreaming about an empty apartment. Just 4 walls, a bed, maybe a small TV. No footsteps overhead, no takeout boxes piling up, no constant low-grade tension humming in the air. The thought scared me, because it felt like cheating, not on Emma, but on the hope I clung to for so long. But once the thought took root, it grew fast. What if I left? Not in anger, not slamming the door behind me, just quietly stepping away from a fight that couldn't be won. I shook it off. Marriage meant staying. Marriage meant fighting. Didn't it? Then Ryan got bolder. One night, I came home late from work, exhausted, ready to drop. Ryan was on the couch, feet propped on the coffee table, remote in hand. My remote. "Hey, man," he said, barely glancing up. "Mind grabbing me a beer?" I froze, grocery bag still in my hand. "Excuse me." "Just grab one, yeah? Fridge is right there." Emma walked in just in time to see my face. "Nathan, would it kill you to help?" she asked, voice sharp. I set the bag down slowly, every muscle in my body tense enough to snap. "You want me to serve him in my own house?" She crossed her arms. "It's a small thing. Why do you always make everything a battle?" Because it wasn't small. It was never small. Every small thing added up until the man I was had shrunk to fit the corner of a couch. A few nights later, I finally broke. Emma had gone upstairs early. Ryan was still on the couch, controller in hand, headset on. I sat across from him, watching the reflection of the TV dance in the dark window. "I need to ask you something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan didn't look up. "Yeah." "When are you leaving?" He paused his game, turned to me and laughed. "Leaving? Man, I'm just getting settled." The words chilled me to the bone. Just getting settled. Like my house had never been mine at all. After that night, I started keeping a notebook. Each page confession I couldn't say out loud. I missed the way she used to look at me. I'm afraid I don't love her anymore. I'm afraid I still do. I don't know who I am if I'm not her husband. I filled pages in quiet hours before dawn, words spilling out faster than I could think. Some nights, the words blurred from tears I didn't remember crying. Then came the final straw. A phone call from my bank. An overdraft notice. $400 gone overnight. Another ATM withdrawal, East Side branch. I confronted Emma, voice shaking, hands shaking worse. "Tell me you didn't give him more money." Her eyes flickered, then settled into that familiar coldness. "He needed it, Nathan, and you weren't going to help." "You're right," I whispered. "I wasn't, because we can't afford this, Emma." She turned away, as if the conversation bored her. "I can't have this fight again." "It's not a fight," I said softly. "It's me telling you that I'm drowning, and you keep handing him buckets of water to pour on my head." That night, lying on the couch, the decision came quietly. Not an explosion. Just a slow, certain realization. I was done. Not because I stopped loving her, but because she'd stopped loving me the way love is supposed to look, with honesty, respect, and shared sacrifice. I didn't know what leaving would look like yet. Didn't know where I'd go, what I'd take. But for the first time in over a year, I felt something close to hope. Not hope for us. Hope for me. Funny thing about making the decision to leave, it doesn't feel like you imagine it would. I thought it would be rage. Doors slammed. Bags thrown into the trunk at midnight. But when it finally came, it felt like stepping into warm water after standing in the cold for too long. A quiet relief, an exhale I didn't know I'd been holding. That night, as I lay on the couch, the springs digging into my ribs, the TV upstairs droning to the ceiling. I didn't picture arguments or tears. Instead, I pictured silence. A kitchen table set for one. A small living room where the remote would stay exactly where I left it. A bed that was mine, no empty side, reminding me of what I'd lost. It wasn't freedom from Emma I wanted. It was freedom from the person I had become in this house. I thought about the man who had moved in with her 5 years ago. Hopeful, sure of himself, believing love could fix anything. Where had that man gone? I'd traded him away in small pieces. The first time I stayed silent to keep the peace, the first time I agreed to just a few weeks, the first time I let Ryan talk over me at my own table. By the time I noticed how much I'd given up, there wasn't much left to fight with. Ryan hadn't just moved into our house. He'd moved into the empty space where my self-respect used to be. Emma's change hadn't happened overnight either. In the beginning, she still reached for my hand under the table, still kissed me goodnight, still whispered apologies when Ryan's presence made dinner awkward. But slowly the apologies stopped. The kisses faded. The hand that used to squeeze mine in private now only pointed at my flaws. It was subtle at first. A sigh when I spoke, a glance at Ryan as if asking permission to laugh. Then came the dismissals. Nathan, why do you have to be so negative? Or worse, silence. The silence that says, I don't see you anymore. One evening, I came home from work earlier than usual. The door was unlocked. The living room smelled of takeout, and the coffee table was cluttered with empty beer bottles and greasy bags. Ryan sat on the couch, controller in hand, headset glowing. Emma was next to him, half listening to whatever game he played, scrolling on her phone. They barely glanced up when I walked in. For the first time, I didn't even bother saying hello. I went straight to the bedroom, our bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed. I looked around. The framed wedding photo on the dresser, the quilt Emma's mother had made us, the small jewelry box she kept on her nightstand. It should have felt like ours. But all I saw were reminders of what used to be. That night, after Emma went to bed and Ryan's game droned on downstairs, I opened my laptop. At first, I just looked. Studio apartments, small condos on the edge of town, places with bad carpet and old appliances. But they were quiet, empty. Mine. Each listing I clicked made the idea more real. I found myself picturing where I'd put my toolbox, how I'd set up my coffee maker, what would feel like to come home to silence. It wasn't anger driving me. It was the promise of breathing without asking permission. I started making lists in my notebook. Things I'd take. My clothes, my tools, the framed photo of my parents. Things I'd leave. The couch we picked together. The bed we hadn't shared in months. The TV Ryan never let me watch. People to call. My friend Lucas, who had a spare room, if I needed it for a few nights. Bank accounts. What was in my personal checking? What was left in our joint account? Seeing it written made it real. The plan wasn't complicated. What terrified me was how simple it was. At work, I started to notice how tense I had been. I'd snap at coworkers over nothing. My shoulders hurt from being clenched all day. Once I decided to leave, the tension eased. I smiled more. I slept better. Still on the couch, still in the same house, but with a heart that finally saw a way out. In quiet moments, doubt crept in. Was I quitting too soon? Shouldn't marriage mean pushing through the hard times? But then I remembered. I had pushed. I had been until I nearly broke. Emma hadn't pushed with me. She had turned her back and opened the door wider for Ryan. I remembered our wedding vows, for better or worse. But worse didn't mean betrayal. Worse didn't mean being made to feel like a stranger in your own home. Worse was supposed to be sickness, grief, job loss. Not your partner choosing someone else, over and over, every single day. Some nights, I imagined staying. Maybe Ryan would finally get a job. Maybe Emma would realize what she was losing. But the truth followed me everywhere. Even if Ryan left tomorrow, what Emma did wouldn't disappear. The secret withdrawals from our account. The cold eyes when I asked for respect. The love that turned into something sharp enough to cut. A week before I planned to go, something small broke me. I came home late, shoulders aching from overtime. In the kitchen, Ryan had left a note. Out of beer. Grab some next time. No, please. No, thanks. Just an order. In my house. Paid for by my work. And Emma saw nothing wrong with it. That night, I packed a small bag and hid it in the trunk of my car. Just a few clothes, my toothbrush, and my grandfather's watch. It wasn't running away. It was moving forward. The night before I left, I sat in the dark living room. The house felt so still. Upstairs, Emma slept on one side of the bed I hadn't shared in months. Ryan's room glowed under the crack of the door, the low hum of his game filling the silence. I closed my eyes and said goodbye. Not to them, but to the man who had tolerated too much for too long. The man who believed love meant sacrificing yourself completely. In the morning, I called Lucas. "Hey," I said, voice trembling. "You still got that spare room?" "Of course," he answered, no questions asked. Real friendship doesn't need explanations. Before work, I left Emma a note on the kitchen counter. "I love you, but I can't keep loving you like this. I hope you find what you're looking for. I need to find myself again." I put my keys next to the note. They felt heavy for something so small. As I drove away, the house disappeared in the rearview mirror. For the first time in over a year, my chest felt light. Fear still sat in the passenger seat. But hope was there too. It wasn't anger that made me leave. It was love. Love for the man I had almost forgotten I could be. I thought leaving would feel like stepping off a cliff. Instead, it felt like closing a door gently behind me and finding, for the first time in years, that the world outside was quiet. The morning I left, the sky was still dark, bruised with the last of the night. I had one suitcase, my old leather one that still smelled faintly of cedar from my grandfather's attic. I didn't take much. Clothes, my laptop, a few tools, my father's wristwatch, and a framed photo of my parents on their wedding day. Driving to Lucas's place felt both terrifying and strangely weightless. Like I had spent years swimming against a current, and suddenly realized all I had to do was stop and float. Lucas lived on the edge of town in a small, two-bedroom apartment above a coffee shop. When I arrived, he was already waiting at the door, hair messy, holding 2 steaming mugs. "Rough night?" he asked softly, not pushing for details. "Rough year," I answered. He nodded and handed me a mug. Black coffee, no sugar. Exactly how I liked it. His spare room was small, barely wide enough for a single bed and a dresser. But it was quiet. No footsteps in the hallway at 2 a.m., no low hum of Ryan's video games bleeding through the walls. Just silence, thick and unfamiliar. The first night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Not because I missed Emma, though part of me did, but because my mind finally had space to breathe. Every argument, every dismissal, every sigh of hers replayed in my head. And for once, I let them. In the mornings, Lucas and I drank coffee in the small kitchen, the sunlight catching on the chipped tiles. He never asked why I left, but sometimes I caught him watching me, like he could see the cracks under the surface. I worked normal hours at the shop. For the first time in months, I found myself humming along to the radio as I fixed carburetors and changed oil. My hands steady, my mind clearer. I realized how heavy it had been to carry doubt, anger, and guilt around every day. At night, I'd walk the quiet streets around Lucas's block. It was early spring. The air smelled of wet asphalt and budding leaves. Each breath felt like reclaiming a part of myself. I remembered what it felt like to choose dinner, without worrying who'd complain, to read late into the night, without the glow of Ryan's TV seeping through the walls. To open my wallet without feeling Emma's hidden withdrawals tugging at my conscience. 2 days after moving in, I got a message from Emma. "We need to talk." Just 4 words, but they echoed through me. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over reply. But what was left to say? I put the phone down and let it buzz on the nightstand. Later that night, Lucas found me on the balcony, staring out at the quiet street. "You okay?" he asked. I hesitated. "I don't know." He nodded. understanding that, okay, wasn't something that could happen overnight. In the stillness, memories flooded back. The first time Emma laughed at my jokes. The way she used to brush flour off her nose when baking. The night we stayed up till sunrise on the kitchen floor, just talking. And then the shift. The small eyes. The cold glances. The night she chose Ryan's comfort over my dignity. I let those memories come, not to torture myself, but to see them clearly. To see her as she truly was, not the woman I loved, but the woman she became. By the end of the week, I visited the apartment I'd applied for earlier. A one-bedroom on the north side. It smelled faintly of paint and dust. The blinds were crooked, the carpet stained near the window. But it was mine. I signed the lease that afternoon. The pen felt heavy in my hand, but when I handed back the papers, I felt lighter. Moving and was quick. I didn't have much. A few boxes, a toolbox, a worn-out armchair from Lucas's garage. But standing in that empty living room, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, possibility. I sat on the carpet, back against the wall, and closed my eyes. The silence was complete. No footsteps above me. No arguments waiting in the kitchen. Just me, and somehow that was enough. The first night alone, I cooked pasta. Simple, clumsy. The sauce boiled over, staining the stove. But it tasted better than any meal I'd had in months. Because it was mine. After dinner, I unpacked a photo of my parents. They looked so young, eyes bright with a future they couldn't see. I set it on the windowsill. Hope you're proud. I whispered. Days turned into weeks. Emma's messages became longer, desperate. Please. I miss you. Ryan's gone. I made a mistake. I didn't reply because it wasn't about Ryan anymore. It was about the choice she made, again and again, to leave me alone in my own marriage. Lucas came by with a crate of tools I'd left at the old house. You gonna start fixing this place up? He asked. Yeah, I said. I think I will. I patched holes in the wall, scrubbed years of grime from the tiles, replaced the broken blinds. Each small repair felt like patching the holes in myself, too. One night, exhausted and covered in dust, I sat on the floor and realized I was smiling. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was finally honest. Emma kept calling. One evening, after a long day, I picked up. Nathan, her voice cracked, raw and tired. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have listened. I should have chosen us. I listened silently. Ryan stole from me, she sobbed. He's gone and I don't know where. I can't pay the mortgage alone. Please come home. Home, a word that used to mean her. Now it meant these walls, these small imperfections, this quiet. I hope you find peace, Emma, I said softly, but I already found mine. After I hung up, I stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was release. Some nights were still hard. Loneliness can echo louder than any argument. But I'd rather face that silence and go back to a house where my voice meant nothing. One morning, I woke up to birdsong outside my window. I brewed coffee, sat on my battered armchair, and watched the steam curl into the morning light. No one to argue with. No one to please. Just me, breathing freely. I realized then, leaving wasn't the end. It was a beginning. The beginning of a life where love wouldn't mean losing myself. Where kindness wouldn't mean silence. Where home was a place I built, brick by brick, choice by choice. I never thought moving out would be this liberating. The first few days of my new apartment blurred together. Waking up to sunlight filtering through half-open blinds, drinking coffee from a chipped mug, and listening to the city wake around me. The quiet wasn't just absence of noise, it was a presence itself, a kind of peaceful space where my thoughts could finally stretch out instead of being squeezed. I found myself drifting into memories, not the bitter, angry ones I'd carried around for months, but flashes of moments I hadn't allowed myself to remember until now. Like the day Emma and I bought this house. We'd stood in the small yard, holding hands, dreaming about the life we'd build. She'd laughed, saying, "One day, maybe we'll have a kid running around here." I remember thinking, this is it. This is home. But home wasn't just a building. It was the people in it, the respect shared, the love given and received. When that vanished, so did the meaning of those walls. The apartment was modest, maybe too small for someone used to a 3-bedroom house. But it was mine. Every scratch on the hardwood floor, every chip in the kitchen counter, every creak of the pipes, they were real, honest, imperfect. I bought cheap curtains from a thrift store and hung them crooked. The cheap smell of fresh paint still clung faintly to the walls, a reminder of a fresh start. I didn't want things perfect. I wanted the mine. Work kept me grounded. At the auto shop, I was just Nathan, the guy who fixed engines, changed oil, and patched dents. No guilt, no complicated feelings, just hands moving, tools in motion, the smell of motor oil and rubber filling my senses. Sometimes, I'd catch myself humming to the radio, a small habit I'd abandoned long ago in that suffocating house where silence was a weapon. I started saving again, slowly but surely. Each paycheck was a brick in the foundation of this new life. Paid rent, groceries, utilities, all by me for me. Yet, loneliness crept in. Not the kind that hits like a wave and crashes, but a slow, steady drip that fills the quiet spaces between moments. I miss having someone to share small things with, a joke, a cup of coffee, the end-of-day exhaustion. But I refuse to settle for anything less than respect. One night, I sat on my balcony with a beer, staring at the glowing city below. I thought about Emma, about the choices she made, about Ryan, about the lies and the stolen money, about the family I lost. But more than anything, I thought about myself. For years, I put everyone else first. Emma, her brother, our marriage. I buried my feelings under understanding and patience. I convinced myself that love meant sacrifice. But love without boundaries is just a cage. I realized that night I'd been locked in a cage made of my own kindness. Emma's messages never stopped. At first, they were desperate. Apologies, promises, please. Then they turned angry. Then silent. I didn't respond. I didn't want to be dragged back into the chaos. One evening, the phone rang again. I almost didn't pick up. But something made me. It was Emma. Her voice was broken, worn. I'm sorry, Nathan. Truly, I made mistakes. Ryan's gone. I'm alone. I didn't know what to say. How's the house? I asked finally. Foreclosure, she whispered. They gave me 30 days. I took a breath. This is the consequence, I said quietly. That night, I lay awake thinking about consequences, about how every choice ripples outward, about how my silence and kindness had allowed the destruction to grow unchecked. But I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I called my sister the next day. Can we talk? I asked. She listened quietly as I poured everything out, the betrayal, the exhaustion, the pain. You deserve better, she said softly. Her words felt like a bomb. Slowly, I started rebuilding. Not just my apartment, but my soul. I signed up for therapy. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected. I went for runs, sometimes early in the morning, when the city was still asleep. The fresh air filled my lungs. The rhythm of my feet on pavement became a meditation. One afternoon at a small cafe, I met someone new. Her name was Lisa, a barista with a warm smile and an easy laugh. She didn't pry about my past. She just listened. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not as a husband, not as a provider, but just as Nathan. Weeks turned into months. I found joy in small things, cooking dinner without interruption, reading books at my own pace, filling the apartment with music. The scars from the past didn't disappear, but they softened. One evening, as I sat on my couch, my phone buzzed. A message from Emma. Can we meet? I want to explain. I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted closure. Another part just wanted peace. I didn't reply immediately. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in years. I'm learning that love is not a sacrifice of self. It is a partnership of respect. I'm learning that sometimes the bravest thing is to walk away. And that peace is not found in others, but within. The next day, I called Emma. We can talk, I said. But I knew, deep down, that no conversation could fix what was broken. When we met, it was civil. She apologized again, tears in her eyes. I listened. I forgave not for her, but for me. Afterward, I walked away feeling lighter. Because sometimes letting go isn't losing. It's winning your life back. The days after meeting Emma felt like walking through fog. There was something oddly peaceful about closure, even if it wasn't the kind of closure I'd hoped for. Her apologies rang sincere, but I knew some wounds ran too deep to be healed with words. I went back to my apartment and sat on the worn-out couch, staring at the wall, the silence pressing in. That's when I realized moving on isn't linear. It's a twisted, messy climb, full of setbacks, moments of doubt, and unexpected bursts of strength. The first real test came 2 weeks later. A letter arrived from the bank, a foreclosure notice for the house Emma and I once called home. It was strange, reading the words on paper that described a place I hadn't lived in for months. That house wasn't mine anymore, nor was it hers. It was just a shadow of a life we once dreamed of. I sat there, the letter heavy in my hands, memories swirling like a storm. I thought about all the sacrifices I made, the late shifts, the extra jobs, the nights spent calming tempers, and how none of it was enough to hold that life together. I called my sister again. "Is there anything we can do?" I asked. She sighed. "Not really. Sometimes people have to hit rock bottom to rebuild." Her words stuck with me. I realized my fight wasn't with Emma anymore. It was with the idea of family itself, the blurry lines between love, loyalty, and self-respect. For years, I believed love meant sacrificing my boundaries, putting others before myself. But now I saw how dangerous that could be. At work, things started to change. I was more focused, sharper. The mechanics noticed, even joked I was born again. Maybe I was. Lucas kept pushing me to try new things, a certification course, maybe even starting my own small repair business someday. The thought scared me, but also ignited a spark I hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, Lisa became a steady presence. Our casual conversations at the cafe slowly deepened into genuine connection. She didn't rush me, never asked about my past too much, but when I shared, she listened without judgment. One evening, after a late shift, she walked me home under the glow of streetlights. We talked about dreams, fears, and the odd twists life throws at you. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future beyond survival. But healing wasn't just about new beginnings. Sometimes the past barged in uninvited. One afternoon, I ran into Danny, Emma's cousin, at a hardware store. He looked uneasy, shuffling his feet like he wanted to avoid the conversation. "Hey, Nathan," he said, voice low. "I heard about what happened." I nodded, bracing myself. "Carmen told me Marcus left town. No one's heard from him since. A lot of families been burned." I felt a cold pang in my chest. The brother-in-law who caused so much pain was gone, vanished like smoke. That night, I lay awake thinking about betrayal and forgiveness. Could I forgive a family who chose loyalty over honesty? Could I forgive myself for staying silent so long? The answers didn't come easily. In the weeks that followed, I took small steps to rebuild my life. I registered for night classes in business management. I wanted to understand the world beyond wrenches and grease. To dream bigger. At work, I started mentoring younger mechanics, sharing not just technical skills, but life lessons I'd learned the hard way. Lisa and I grew closer. We spent weekends exploring the city's hidden corners, little parks, old bookstores, quiet cafes. She became my anchor, a reminder that not all relationships were doomed to hurt. One evening, as I sat by the window, journal in hand, I wrote, "Life doesn't hand you peace. You have to chase it down, wrestle it into submission, and claim it as your own." I was learning to chase peace, not just survive, but thrive. But old wounds sometimes reopened. Emma's messages slowed, but never stopped entirely. She sent pictures of the house, now empty and silent. She sent updates about Ryan's disappearance, the police reports, the broken promises. She sent apologies wrapped in desperation. I never replied. Instead, I focused on me. My dreams, my health, my happiness. I took long runs in the morning, pushing my body to keep up with my mind's newfound strength. I cooked new recipes, learning the simple joy of nourishing myself. One night, as I lay on the couch, Lisa slipped her hand into mine. No words needed. It was enough. Looking back, I realized that leaving wasn't just about walking away from a toxic home. It was about reclaiming my identity, rediscovering self-worth buried beneath years of compromise. I'm still a work in progress. Some days are harder than others, but I'm no longer afraid to say no. No to disrespect. No to neglect. No to losing myself. I've learned that true love isn't about losing boundaries. It's about building bridges. Bridges built on trust, respect, and shared dreams. And sometimes, the hardest bridge to build is the one back to yourself. The weeks rolled on, each day layering more clarity on top of the wreckage I'd left behind. I was learning to live again, not as a ghost in someone else's life, but as the architect of my own. The apartment had slowly transformed from a bare, unfamiliar space into a home. A place where the sound of my own laughter echoed against the walls, where the scent of fresh coffee was a ritual, not an afterthought. Work became more than just a paycheck. It was therapy, a grounding force in chaos. Each car I repaired, each engine I coaxed back to life, was a small victory. I reminded myself I could fix broken things. Maybe I could even fix myself. Lucas, my co-worker and reluctant mentor, pushed me harder. "You ever think about starting your own shop?" he asked one morning, wiping grease off his hands. I shrugged, scared of failing. He laughed. "Fear's just fuel, man. Use it." That stuck with me. One evening, Lisa and I went out to a small jazz club downtown. The dim lights, the smooth saxophone, the low hum of conversations. It felt like stepping into a new world. She looked at me, her eyes bright. "Remember when you said you wanted to dream bigger?" I nodded. "Well, what's stopping you?" Nothing, I realized. But the ghosts of the past still lingered. Emma's absence was a loud silence. Her betrayal, the money gone, the lies. They all haunted me in quiet moments. I couldn't forget the nights I spent lying awake, imagining the fights that never were, the conversations I wish I'd had. Then came the phone call that shook me. It was Danny, Emma's cousin. "Marcus is back," he said, voice low. My heart skipped. "Where?" "No one knows. But he's asking around, looking for money, favors." Old anger bubbled up. That man who took everything and ran was back, dragging Emma's name through the mud once more. I felt torn. A part of me wanted to shield myself, to stay far away. Another part, a small stubborn spark, wanted to help Emma, to salvage whatever was left. But I knew the truth. Sometimes, the best help is letting go. I decided to face Emma one last time. We met at the park near the apartment, a neutral place where neither of us had to pretend. Her eyes were red, exhausted. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said quietly. We talked about what was lost, what could never be repaired. No shouting, no blame, just two people acknowledging the end of a chapter. That day, I closed the door on the past for good. I turned to the future. I enrolled in a small business course. I started drafting plans for my own auto repair shop. Not just a dream, but a goal. Every page I filled was a brick in the foundation of my new life. Lisa stood by me through it all. Her support wasn't flashy, but steady. She celebrated my small wins, listened when I faltered, and reminded me that I was worthy of happiness. One rainy afternoon, I stood outside the old house one last time. The windows were boarded up, the yard overgrown. I took a deep breath. That place was a symbol of what I lost, but also of what I escaped. Back in my apartment, I pulled out my journal. I wrote, "I lost a house, a marriage, a family, but I found myself. I learned that love without respect is empty, and sacrifice without boundaries is self-destruction. I'm not the man I was a year ago. I'm stronger, wiser, and ready to build a life on my own terms." The next morning, I signed a lease for a small commercial space. The real work was about to begin. Opening day arrived with a mix of nerves and excitement. I painted the walls myself, hung a sign that read, "Nathan's Auto Repair" in bold letters, and stocked the shelves with tools and supplies. The first customer pulled in, a young woman with a sputtering engine and worried eyes. I fixed her car, charging only what was fair. When she thanked me, her gratitude was genuine. It hit me then. This wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about restoring trust in others and in myself. Word spread slowly but surely. Business grew, and with it, my confidence. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Late one evening, Lisa joined me in the shop. She smiled, eyes reflecting the soft glow of the overhead lights. "Look at you," she said, "building your empire." I laughed. "It's just a start." She squeezed my hand. Every empire starts somewhere. That night, I fell asleep knowing I was finally home. Not because of walls or furniture, but because I had taken back control. It's strange how life can fold back on itself in the most unexpected ways. Months after opening my shop, I found myself sitting alone one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon to the large front window. That quiet moment, no noise but the hum of the city outside, felt like a milestone. I wasn't just a man running an auto repair business. I was a man who had survived betrayal, loss, and heartbreak. A man who had rebuilt himself from the ashes of a broken home. The journey to this point was never easy. Every step was riddled with doubt, fear, and moments where I wanted to give up. But the hardest lessons had taught me the most valuable truths. Love isn't about losing yourself in someone else's needs. It's about mutual respect. It's about boundaries, honesty, and shared responsibility. I'd learned that sometimes the people we love aren't the ones who support us, and that's okay. Letting go isn't weakness. It's strength. Lisa had become more than a partner. She was my confidant, my anchor in the storm. She never pressured me or tried to fix my past. Instead, she helped me dream bigger, believe in myself. With her, I felt like I wasn't walking this path alone. One afternoon, the bell over the shop door jingled. A man walked in, older, weathered, carrying an air of humility. "Hi, Nathan," he said quietly. It was Marcus. My heart clenched, but I didn't show it. Marcus looked different, tired, worn down by the road he'd taken. He explained that after disappearing, he'd hit his own kind of rock bottom. No family to turn to, no friends left. He was sorry, truly sorry for everything. For a moment, I considered letting anger rule me. But something in his eyes told me this wasn't about him anymore. It was about closure. I nodded. "Everyone deserves a chance to change," I said. We talked, not about the past, but about what could be done moving forward. I told him that respect, honesty, and contribution weren't optional in any family. If he wanted a place in mine, he'd have to earn it. That conversation was a turning point, not just for Marcus, but for me. It was the final piece of the puzzle in reclaiming my life. I thought back to the nights on the couch, the silent dinners, the fights avoided but never solved. I thought of Carmen's betrayal, the secret withdrawals from our account, the shattered trust. I thought of the anger that simmered quietly, threatening to boil over. And I realized something important. I wasn't defined by their choices. I was defined by mine. I chose to protect myself. I chose to build boundaries. I chose to live with integrity. The shop flourished. The community grew to trust Nathan's auto repair, not just for skill, but for honesty. I hired a couple mechanics who shared my vision of respect and hard work. We weren't just fixing cars. We were building a family based on values, not bloodlines. Lisa and I found joy in simple things, weekend hikes, cooking together, planning trips to places neither of us had seen before. Her laughter was a soundtrack to my new life. On a quiet Sunday morning, I called my mother. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. It was the first time in a long while I felt truly connected. I realized that family is complicated. It's messy, imperfect, sometimes painful. But it can also be chosen, rebuilt, and redefined. Standing behind the counter at my shop, I often catch myself smiling. Not because life is perfect, but because I'm finally living my truth. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, Cuisinim, it's this. Never lose yourself trying to save someone else. Boundaries are not walls. They're the gates that protect your peace. Sacrifice is noble only when it's mutual. And sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. So here I am, 11 months after walking out that door. A man who's lost a lot, but gained even more. Stronger, wiser, and finally free. Thank you for following my story. If my journey teaches anything, it's that hope isn't found in holding on to broken things. It's found in having the courage to start over. Nathan out.